Sage Rosenfels, Brent Blum. Heard and viewed exclusively across the world, only on Iowa Everywhere.
And we welcome you to the Tuesday, October 4th edition of the Rose and Bloom podcast on the Iowa Everywhere Podcast Network. We are now officially sponsored by Circa in Iowa. They are the official sportsbook of Iowa Everywhere. Appreciate the great folks at Circa for jumping on board, and what a great partnership it will be. And stay tuned here on the Iowa Everywhere Network for our new show debuting today. It's called The Hook with Ken Miller and one of his friends from Circa, and it's going to be a great time. Gambling-specific podcast at Sage. We've got a different show today. We'll let the heavy guys discuss the football and everything else from the weekend for Iowa State and Iowa, both dropping disappointing games. But we've got Trey Wingo on the podcast today. But first, where are you today, Sage Rosenfels?
So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this podcast, wherever you're listening to this podcast. I am Sage Rosenfels. I am in my house, in my kitchen, as my extra room upstairs is being redone. I think it's going to take 6 months to probably paint this room. Probably should take about 6 hours, but at some point I'll be up there, have a nice office. You're obviously back in your home in God's country, middle of Iowa. Trey Wingo on today. Really looking forward to our discussion. Talk about a guy who loves the NFL, is deep in it, longtime NFL Live host, which really, grew that program from half an hour a week to now it really takes over basically. I feel like the ESPN day and how the NFL sort of taking over sports in general. And Trey's been in the sports world for a long time, 23 years at ESPN, but has been in Iowa, has been at Vets Auditorium, covering arena football, covering Kurt Warner back with the Barnstormers. So he's got some Midwestern time there, 6 years in St. Louis. But now he works for one of his many jobs, is that he works for Caesars. And so he's doing analytics work, and he is a information stats sort of – I don't want to call him a genius. But
no, he's a genius, yeah.
The way he remembers plays and games and decisions by coaches from 4 years ago, from 5 years, from 20 years ago. He's one of those people that when people say, I can't stand, like I say, a woman that doesn't like sports, I can't stand my husband because, he knows who the backup third baseman is for the Pittsburgh Pirates in that's Trey Wingo right there. He knows so much information, and his career's moved on from ESPN, and now he has an array of things. Looking forward to that conversation. Should be a good one.
Yeah, really enjoyed that conversation. Let's get to it. Here is Trey Wingo. Well, now very pleased to be joined in our guest for today. That is Trey Wingo from the Trey Wingo podcast, and one of my favorite podcasts. Trey, a big NFL guy, and interviews a bunch of current football players. It's the Half Forgotten History, which you can find on all of your favorite podcasts. Trey, how are you?
I'm good. Can I do the plug thing that we can just get it all out of the way?
Let's do it.
So I don't offend anybody.
No.
Yeah. The Half Forgotten History podcast on my YouTube page, Trey Wingo Presents, wherever you get your podcast. I'm the Chief Trends Officer and Brand Ambassador for Caesars Sportsbook. I'm the Chief NFL Analyst for Pro Football Network. I write for Facebook at treywingo.bulletin.com. I'm now a member of the 33rd team, working with a bunch of players there. I also have a show every Monday night at Spotify Live at 6 o'clock with my old friend Mark Schlereth. We do a weekly football show. And am I missing anything? There might be one that I've missed. So if it gets to me later, I'll throw it in there as well. So
now that that's out of the way, what I'm really interested in is your golf. Because if you go on Trey's socials, the man plays some golf in some beautiful places. It seems like Hawaii a lot. What brings you to Hawaii so often? And wait, do you live on the East Coast? Do you live West Coast?
Well, okay. This is where there's no way I can say this without sounding douchey. So, I swim in these waters, and I fully understand that people will say, "Oh, F you," when I say this. We spend half the year on the coast of Connecticut, and we spend half the year in Maui.
Well done.
So is it 6 months and 6 months, or is it sort of like we go for 2 months, we come home for 2 months?
No, I think that the way this is a new thing, by the way. We've been going over there for years to stay, and we bought a place 2 years ago, and we just moved into this place here. Again, total douche discussion. I get it. I get it. People be like, oh, what a but it is. This is what it is. We moved back into this house. We sold our big house, and then we bought a piece of land down in a place called Mason's Island in Mystic, Connecticut. We built the house. We moved in July. The plan is to be here June through November. My parents are both alive, thank God, and they live in Rancho Mirage, California. Mm-hmm. So in December, we rent a house out there to be near them for the holidays. And then after January, we skedaddle to Maui until such time as it stops snowing. Like, I have a friend of mine who lives down here. She said, oh, you'll love the St. Patrick's Day parade in Mystic, Connecticut. And I said, I will never see that parade. If I see that St. Patrick's Day parade in the middle of March in Connecticut and I'm not on Maui, I have completely screwed it up.
Or something's happened, you've had to run back home, a family event.
I prefer to think that I'm going to screw it up.
Something up.
That's a default mechanism here.
So I'm a big golf guy, Trey. What's your favorite course you've played, or because I know you worked several Open championships?
Yeah, I did. That was one of the greatest runs ever. Every summer, I do the draft, take some time off, go to the U.S. Open, take some time off, then take some time off, then go to the Open Championship, take some time off, and then football season starts. This is a really good one right here. This is called Cabot Cape Breton.
Okay.
It's in Nova Scotia. They have two courses there: the Cliffs course and the Links course. True, pure links golf. The Cliffs course is a 6, 6, and 6 course. 6 par 3s, 6 par 4s, 6 par 5s. Jeez. It is incredibly fun. The Links course is a true link style course right by the ocean, 9 in, 9 out, or 9 out, 9 in. And they just opened a place they're opening a place in St. Lucia called Cabot St. Lucia, which I plan on getting to very soon. But, Pinehurst is great. We did the whole Scotty golf thing last summer. In one summer, we did Sand Valley, Mammoth Dunes, Erin Hills, and all of the Kohler properties, Whistling Straits, Black Wolf Run, all of that. That was phenomenal. Listen, if there's a good golf course, I'm going to find it. I'm not going to play well, but I'm going to find it.
Have you been to the courses I live in Omaha. Have you been to the courses in central Nebraska?
Or Iowa?
Not.
Have you ever played golf in Iowa?
So we actually have.
Well, you have sand dunes, right?
One's called Sand Hills.
Sand Hills,
one's called Dismal River, and one's called the Prairie Club. And believe it or not, most of Nebraska, back when these tectonic plates were floating around, I think the story is like the North American plate and the Pacific plate, and they hit and they created the Rocky Mountains. Well, most of western Nebraska was actually under the ocean, like under a sea. And when they hit, everything rose up. So a lot of Nebraska is just straight sand. It's just sort of sand with grass growing out of it. And northwest Nebraska is super hilly. And they sort of have these big rolling sand hills. And there's like an unlimited amount of water underneath here. That's the difference between like here in Arizona right now is this rolling sand hills with unlimited amounts of water underneath, basically the Ocala Aquifer. And so they just pump tons of water into these areas, and to dig out a sand trap, they just dig it out, and there you go. They're not bringing, we're the Midwest. You got to bring in sand from Florida or from these other places. But here they'll just dig into a hill in this giant, very much like Whistling Straits. I played there, these giant cool sand traps and huge wide fairways. It's beautiful out there, but that's mostly sort of private jet country. Either you sort of drive from Omaha or even Denver, about probably 4+ hours, or people will take their jets in from all over. I think most of their members don't live in Nebraska. I think they're all.
Let me say along those lines. One, I've learned more about the geological background of Nebraska than I ever thought I would today. So that's wonderful. We learned something.
Welcome.
Number two,
you said you wanted to play. You said you wanted to play all the good golf courses.
Yeah, I'm about it. And this place is impossible to get to. Like for me, I live on the East Coast, just so people understand. To get to Cabot, Cape Breton, I have to drive to Boston. Take the easiest way commercially. Take a flight from Boston to Halifax, and then it's a 4-hour drive from Halifax to Cape Breton. Or there's a little airstrip 45 minutes away, and that's a much easier way to get there. By the way, speaking of Midwest golf, I played Crooked Stick 2 weeks ago for the first time.
Awesome.
Pete Dye course, right side of Indianapolis. That was a really, really fun track, and maybe the fairest Pete Dye course ever. So how PG-13 are we on this podcast?
We are rated R.
Yeah.
Okay, good, because this is normally what Pete Dye golf courses do to golfers for 18 holes, right? It's like Pete Dye, God bless him, rest in peace. But I think his whole point of making golf courses was to F the golfers. And Crooked Stick was the first Pete Dye golf course where I didn't feel like I was being hit by a hammer for 18 holes in the head. So
do you think it's because mostly Pete Dye courses are the small greens, and so most people just aren't that accurate with their
but
irons?
it's not even that. Have you played the river course at Black Wolf Run?
Yes.
Okay. That course, on every hole, there's nowhere to hit the ball. There's a short little par 4. It runs along the river. It's 280 yards, okay? But if you want to take a direct line to the green, there's a 40-foot tree in the way. And there's a river to the right of it. So you can't go right. You have to either hit it out to the right and draw it around the tree from 280 yards, or fun, you can take a short route to the left, lay up and have a 100-yard shot in. There are 8 bunkers to the left of the tree. Where am I supposed? I felt like the smart play was to hit wedge, but who wants to do that? It was so annoying. An important
part of golf, or a good golf course, or even just a good golf hole. I played Pine Valley when I was playing for the Giants.
Love Pine Valley.
Pine Valley, and there wasn't one, one hole that was just wow, an incredible hole. There were just 18 fantastic holes on this course, but they always sort of gave you an opportunity to play it safe.
Correct.
Not everybody is a zero handicap, right? So for the good players, there were certain ways of playing it, but you had a spot to bail out. And it seems like Pete Dye courses don't really give you many options to sort of play it safe or to bail out. It sounds like it's a water on the right and sand traps on the left with a giant tree in the middle of the fairway.
The thing about Pine Valley too, which is great, is that it's really a mental FU. Because all you see is the bad shit, right? For example, the first hole is a shortish par 4 dogleg right, I don't know, 360 yards. Okay,
yeah, it's not a long course.
Not long course, but to the left is nothing but trees and these bunkers that aren't bunkers. There's no bunkers on Pine Valley. Everything is a waste area, and right where the turn goes to the right, there's nothing but trees and bunkers. So you're thinking to yourself, okay, I got to hit a 210 yard shot, and I've got to hit it straight as an arrow. Otherwise, I'm in the shit to the right or I'm in the shit to the left.
Yes.
And then the second hole is about a 360, 70 yard par 4 uphill. And the fairway is actually 50, 60 yards wide. But all in front of the tee box to the fairway is shit. All down the left side is shit. All down the right side are trees and shit. And then it's an uphill green, and from 80 yards in, it's nothing but an elevation of nothing but shit. So it's really hit it in the middle, 200 yards, and just throw an 8-iron onto the green. But all you see is shit. And your brain just starts going, what am I doing?
And I'm paying for this.
There's a par 3. I don't know what number it is, but there's a par 3 that's
5.
Just sort of, it's just sort of a little bit uphill. But there's a fairway.
230. It's 230 yards. You got to cross a pond, dark trees, tall trees to the right, shit bunkers to the You have to hit a perfect shot. I won that hole once with a 5. I won it with a 5 on a par 3.
Oh my goodness. Well, hey, we have private airports in Iowa, believe it or not. So if you ever need a pit stop on the way from Connecticut to Maui, we've got some courses too for you.
Let me tell you something, okay? I'm about Iowa. I watched Kurt Warner and Leonard Conley play for the Iowa Barnstormers.
Yeah,
Willis Jaycox,
St.
Louis. Yeah,
Willis Jaycox.
When I was working in St. Louis, and I was the color guy for the St. Louis Stampede of the year.
No way, yeah. That's funny story.
Greatest uniforms in football ever.
Still is.
Not even close.
This is 100%. I went to a school in Des Moines, and Kurt Warner talked to my 5th grade class about, responsibility and work ethics. And he was, some quarterback for the Barnstormers. And all the kids are like, why is some guy from the Barnstormers here talking to our class? Ended up being Kurt Warner. And then they made a movie about
his life.
Yeah. So it's crazy. I actually had season tickets to the Barnstormers. in Veterans Auditorium, it was, I mean, maybe the best atmosphere that you could ever have. Yeah. So that's awesome.
I don't disagree. And, you know, like Kurt was the first guy we had on the podcast, and I talked about the uniforms and how great they were. And he actually went and got the helmet with the goggles on it, and the pants and with the you know the propellers on them.
Yep,
greatest uniforms in football. I will die on that hill.
They're still around, but they're now in like this IFL, and it's not the same. It's like
it's interesting in the state of Iowa that we've never had pro sports. That either college sports were the pro sports, or the Cyclones or the Hawkeyes. But the arena, like we show up for the national events. If you have a senior U.S. Open or a senior PGA Championship at West Des Moines Golf and Country Club, or whatever, it'll be the highest attended golf tournament on the senior tour, the Champions Tour, I guess, the entire year. We show up for these events, including the Arena League. We loved our Arena League. I think we're one of the teams that probably financially we were making it happen, and Kurt Warner being the beginning of that whole thing, to go on to have his career was a pretty cool thing for the state of Iowa. And Hy-Vee, where he worked, is like like the Iowa grocery store.
I'm still mad we lost the '97 Arena Bowl to Tampa, and I think Jay Gruden was the quarterback.
Yeah, the other great name I remember from those days of the Arena League was Hunky Cooper.
Yes.
Who was the quarterback do-everything player for the Arizona Rattlers, which was also a very good name.
Yes.
But not that their uniform was not as cool as the Iowa Barnstormers.
The one question we ask all of our guests is how do you know the GOAT of the NFL preseason, Sage Rosenfels, if at all?
Is that like Crash Davis having the most home runs in the minors?
I think so, and I'll take it. It because what is it? I believe in slow, wet, dark, or what?
Slow, deep, wet kisses that last 3 days. That whole speech we can get into, but I don't think the kids need to hear it.
Probably not.
No.
I'm just going to throw that out there. Although I do have that on a poster in my basement. I just want to throw that out.
Really, one of the greatest.
It's one of the greatest.
We could go into. We can ask that question later. We'll come around to top 3 greatest sports movies of all time.
Absolutely.
We'll
So I've known Sage forever, obviously covered him when he played and been following him on Twitter. And we actually met. It was, I think we might've bumped into each other one other places, but the real get together conversation was at Super Bowl 54 in Miami on the beach. He's out there with, I think it was Jane Slater of NFL Network and a couple other people, and our set and our hotel was right there. And I walked out and he came up and said hi. We had a great conversation. And then Tim Hasselbeck and his wife, Elizabeth, showed up. And I think Matt showed up at one point. So it's like, the ultimate world. Cool story, bro.
Yeah.
Hanging out on the beach,
That's for Sage. Sage is America's guest.
But we end up talking about football. I mean, it's that's sort of how it works when you get in these spaces around each other. And so you have this little small talk. Hey, good to see you. What do you think of the 49ers defense? Think they're going to stop? That's sort of how those conversations go. Or for quarterbacks, start talking about coaches and who'd you play for, and what was there? And you start talking about languages and there's that quirks that those coaches would have. You immediately just sort of go into the game.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because we had Al Guido, who's the president of the Niners, on the show that week, and I was like, what do you think? He goes, Trey, I love our team. I think our team is top to bottom is great, but that guy scares the hell out of me. That guy was Patrick Mahomes. And I was like, you're right. You have a better team. Top to bottom, if you rank your roster 1 through 53, I'm not sure you don't have 40 of the 44 of the best players. But that guy is a fucking unicorn.
Yeah.
And we saw it again. We saw it again Sunday night. Let me, if you allow me this sort of rant, and I think Sage you'll appreciate this. I admire people who have passionate feelings about a certain player. If you love Josh Allen, you should love Josh Allen. He's amazing. If you think Justin Herbert is the next best quarterback, that's awesome. He has all the talent in the world. You like Joey Burrow, the hard scrabble kid from Ohio. Look what he did to rebound the Bengals and come back from adversity that often. That's all great. But I am so effing sick and tired of people trying to discount what Patrick Mahomes has done. I feel like we're looking for the next thing when we don't understand what we have.
He's right there.
Okay. Yeah. He's I have the receipts if I'm Patrick Mahomes. I have a 50 touchdown pass season in my first season as a starter. Okay. Tom Brady didn't get in his first season as a starter. Peyton Manning didn't get in his first season as a starter. I get the game has changed a little bit. I have, a Super Bowl MVP. I have a Super Bowl win. I have a regular season MVP. I have the most passing yards and passing touchdowns the first 4 years of a quarterback starting in NFL history. I have the most passing touchdowns through the first 30 games. I have all of these things. And I've hosted 4 straight AFC championship games, something that the Brady Patriots never did, something that the Cowboys of the 90s never did, even though it's an NFC, something that the Steelers of the 70s never did, something that the Niners of the 80s never did. No one had hosted 4 straight championship games before then. And if they just kicked a damn field goal at the end of the first half last year, they'd go to 3rd straight Super Bowl last year. And I would say they probably would have won that game. So I get a little annoyed when people start anointing somebody else. Like, do the things that Patrick Mahomes has done and then get back to me and we'll have that conversation. And when you do, great. That's awesome. I'm happy for you and I'm happy for your guy. But don't pretend like he's not the dude.
Yeah, and I always Tyreek Hill made Patrick Mahomes. Well, that doesn't appear that way. So
think so.
So who's the best team in football right now? I think it's a fascinating question. Are the Eagles for real? Mahomes is still there. I think Josh Allen, the Bills are there too. The Niners proved last night. I mean, if Garoppolo is just okay, they're going to be tough to beat.
Let me deal with that part last.
Okay.
First, rather, I'll get to the other part. This was the greatest insurance policy the Niners could have ever cashed. Okay, I hope Trey Lance has a wonderful career. I think he has the potential to be a really good quarterback, and that's why the Niners moved up in the draft to get him. But Jimmy G is the best fit for this team, and the Niners knew it, and Jimmy G knew it, and that's why he decided to stay. Outside of the Denver game where he pulled an Orlovsky and walked out of the back of the end zone. That was the tipping point in that game. They won 11-10. Jimmy G, for the most part, is not going to screw it up. And by Jimmy G not screwing it up, they've been to a Super Bowl, had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter, and they should have gone to the Super Bowl last year. I mean, everybody loves the romance of the Rams story last year. Oh, Matthew Stafford, they come over, L.A. story, it's Hollywood. Well, he threw an arm punt in the fourth quarter to Jaquiski Tartt, who proved that's why he's a defensive back and not a wide receiver. Because if Jaquiski Tartt catches that for the 49ers, none of this story about Matthew Stafford and the Rams and the fairy tale ending and the Hollywood ending exists, because they were up 10. That interception, if he just catches it, that's ball game. See you later. Good night. Sayonara. So what I'm saying is about Jimmy Garoppolo is he's the best guy at this point to run what they need to do with the offense they have, with the offensive line they have, with the defense they have, and the weapons they want to use offensively.
The thing is,
Trey Lance gets there. Trey Lance will get there, but he's not there yet.
The thing is with San Francisco, and we talked about a little bit this last week when we talked about the Eagles. Jalen Hurts, a quarterback, $1.6 million salary cap. Everyone else, $45 million. 49ers, also, they're not spending $45 million on the quarterbacks in their salary cap. I'm not sure what Trey Lance's is, but obviously Garoppolo is much less than what it's 25 or whatever it's been the last few years.
I think it's 16. If he plays the rest of the season, he can get up to 20, which is still, quite frankly, a bargain for quarterbacks these days, which I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true.
It's not ridiculous. It's capitalism at its finest. But the other, even if it is 16 and say like Trey Lance is 4 at 20, well, there's $25 million for the 49ers to spend on the rest of their roster. And there is this sort of business model that has worked consistently, and then it doesn't work once you have to actually pay the guy. Worked with Goff, worked with Kaepernick and Russell Wilson when they were young. To have a young quarterback, whether a first rounder or a third rounder, to have a young quarterback, and then you get this loaded roster. And the 49ers are still they're sort of getting to play that game in a sense because they don't have an elite quarterback and not spending $45 million. So they sort of have this loaded roster, and they've hit on a lot of draft picks, of course. D'Amico Ryans, by the way.
Great coordinator.
Great coordinator. He was a teammate of mine in 2006. The Houston Texans. Our first pick.
That defense was loaded, by the way, in 2006. Mario Williams and everybody else on that team.
Loaded, but the year before they were 2-14. Capers gets fired. Kubiak gets the job. I was a free agent. I signed. First pick, Mario Williams. Second pick, and everyone wants to take Reggie Bush or Vince Young. So that was like a big story and Kubiak, and this is where Kyle Shanahan does understand it, and I think Sean McVay really does understand, despite the fact that they are offensive guys, they know at the end of the day, absolute studs on defense is necessary to consistently win football games in national football. They can have a chance to win Super Bowls. So they do sort of think, yes, I can make anything out of the offensive players we have. I need to have dudes on the defense. And so Mario Williams, second pick to Miko Ryans, who was just a tackle machine at Alabama. He wasn't a guy who ran a great 40. He wasn't a guy who probably had the long vert in the combine, but he was just a guy who made a ton of tackles, sort of the Zach Thomas type. And that's how he was. First practice, he was starting middle linebacker. He was leading our defense right off the bat and had a really good career. I'm not sure how long he played, 8 to 10 years probably, and got right into coaching, jumped right into that tree that he got his start in. And now I think probably will be a head coach in the next couple of years. I'd like to think so. He's done a phenomenal job with that defense.
He has. So I want to go back to what you asked me to begin before I went off on the Jimmy Garoppolo tangent. I'm a big believer in the here and now. Like, if you're asking me, like, I know who I think is going to be there at the end.
Okay.
But I don't project that because I use the Zen philosopher approach. We'll see. Like, all I can tell you is right now there's one unbeaten team in football, and that's Philadelphia Eagles. I have to put them as the best team in football as we do this in the first week of October. That does not mean in any way, shape, or form that they're still going to be the best team in January. Like, this thing changes dramatically. One of the things I always go back to, it was the 2014 season. This is one of my proudest moments of my entire 20-plus years at ESPN. The Patriots going to Kansas City on a Monday night game and get obliterated. I think it was 41-14.
Yeah, remember that.
Might have been the worst loss at that point, and still might be, quite frankly, in Bill Belichick's coaching career in New England with Tom Brady. And I'm here to tell you that night and that next day, people that I really respected, that I thought were solid football people, were like, it's done.
They're done.
They're over. This dynasty is kaput. Brady. I had one person tell me Brady looked like Joe Namath with the Rams. And I was like, it's October. They're 2-2. The next day on NFL Live, we went through all this stuff with people saying, I said, let's pump the brakes here for a minute. Okay? It's October. You never judge a Bill Belichick team in October. You judge them in January and February. Let's just everybody slow down for a second. Super Bowl 49, 28-24, the Patriots go on to win. Super Bowl 51, 34-28, the Patriots go on to win. Super Bowl 53, 13-3, the Patriots go on to win. And oh, by the way, in between, they made it to Super Bowl 52 and lost 41-33 to the Philadelphia Eagles with a backup quarterback. So, like, everybody needs to calm down, okay? It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And we are literally in the first 12 yards of this thing. So right now, the Philadelphia Eagles are playing the best football in the NFL. 2 weeks ago was the Buffalo Bills. They went out and destroyed two people, 31-10, 41-7, the first two games of the regular season. Since then, they probably should have lost two games. They got away with a 17-point comeback because John Harbaugh made a coaching blunder, in my opinion. Take the freaking points, take the lead, trust your defense.
Always.
Yeah,
put points on the board.
We're going to bring up that game. You're tied. 4 minutes left. I saw the press conference afterwards where he's trying to say our best chance of winning. If you have a chance to take the lead in a sport in the last few minutes of the game,
do it.
If you have a chance to take the lead in the first quarter, you take it. If you're on the one, okay, you want to get a touchdown and maybe go for it the first quarter. In the fourth quarter of a football game, if you can take the lead, you take the lead.
Thank you.
And that makes
it may not be what you wanted. It may not be the thing you were hoping for, but take the freaking points. And I get it. If they executed, because what's his face was wide open in the end zone and Lamar didn't see him in time. But to your point, if it's on the one, right? On second down, they lost 3 yards. It was first and goal from the one. Then J.K. Dobbins got popped in the backfield. So now you're operating at a deficit. And you have to say to yourself, at minimum, we have to take the lead. So it was a triple disaster for me because they went for it, didn't get the touchdown. They didn't kick the field goal. And then by turning it over in the end zone, they ceded 20 yards of field position, which also destroyed their chances of getting Josh Allen from going down there and leading them to at least kick the game-winning field goal. To me, and then to your point about what Harbaugh said after the game, he's like, well, I trust my defense. If you trust your defense, you put the points on the board, and then you trust your defense.
His other excuse was a little nonsensical, too, was if we kick a field goal, now they have 4 downs
They were 4 downs anyway.
I'm like,
Yeah.
they're going to have 4 downs.
Down with under 4 minutes to play. In what scenario is it not 4 down territory when they get the ball back?
If Josh Allen gets it down to the 25-yard line and it's 4th and 6, they're going to kick the field goal too. So you're not going to lose. At the very worst, you're going to be where you were before if you trust your defense at all. And you might lose. You take the lead, they go score a touchdown, you lose the game, it happens. But you have to trust. I feel like coaches a lot of times have if this goes right and this goes right and we get the ball back and we stop them in 3 plays and then there's 20 seconds left and we can win the game. It's like there's a lot of things that have to go right just to have a chance to win it at the end rather than either going for it or what I feel like is the right move.
To that point, to me, the most important thing you can do as a head coach is keep your team in the game for as long as possible. The greatest example of that was Super Bowl 51. We just talked about it. 28-3, the Falcons are leading. Patriots kept going down, couldn't get a touchdown in there. They kept kicking field goals. They kept kicking field goals. With 9+ minutes to play, they're down 28-9. They get stymied in the red zone again. Bill kicks a field goal. And people are like, why is he kicking a field goal? I'm like, because that makes it a 16-point game, which is 2 touchdowns and 2-point conversions. And if you go for it and you don't miss it, it's 28-9. It's over. See you later. Dunzo. And then what happens? 3rd and 1, 7-step drop. Why a 7-step drop on 3rd and 1? Strip sack fumble, 28-16, 2-point conversion, 28-20. Then Julio Jones looks like he makes one of the most amazing catches in Super Bowl history to set them up for a field goal that should end the game. And then, sack, incompletion, penalty, punt, and there they go again. Bill kept the Patriots in the game as long as he could. And then the Falcons finally said, please take this.
Now that we're talking about that, and we were talking about the 49ers just a second ago, there does seem to be this thing where Belichick and Saban would just sort of talk about that when I was with him in Miami, of just constantly putting pressure on the other team. They're just make them punt that punt at the end of the first half. Make them have to at least snap it, punt it, go through the thing. Even if there's 2 seconds left, make them just put a little more pressure because no one wants to punt and to have a chance to have things blocked, right? But Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco does seem to struggle in some of these big games with having the lead. Whether it be at that Atlanta Super Bowl or just some other games of
Super Bowl 54. Super Bowl 54. They had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter
to close it out. Like the old 4-minute offense seems to be, and a lot of times he's very aggressive. He doesn't really. He'll try to throw it when they probably shouldn't, and then it'll be an incomplete pass. And now the other team does have an extra time. Other times, I feel like it's too run heavy and puts them in 3rd and long. Go ahead.
But to your point, this played out in the Super Bowl that we met. Okay, and I've had this debate with people all the time. It was 21-10, and the Chiefs score on the Wasp. They get the big 3rd and 17 completion on Wasp, and so they make it a 21-17 game. Or 20-17 game, because it was 31-20 was the final score. Sorry. So it was 20-10. And on 1st down on the ensuing play, on the ensuing drive, they rip off 7 yards. And then he throws it twice. And Tim Hasselbeck said to me, Trey, but if you look at the 2nd down play where he's trying to throw it, they had a coverage where Kittle was going to be covered by Terrell Suggs, which is a win for everybody. But Chris Jones tipped the pass. And said the play was there to work. And I'm like, I get it, but when you call plays, you have to factor in the possibility that it doesn't work. That's called managing the game. Like Kyle is always a run-heavy guy, right? And in the Super Bowl against the Patriots in Super Bowl 51, he abandoned the run for a 7-step drop on 3rd and 1. Even if they don't get it on 3rd and 1, just the time of possession and the punt yardage probably takes the Patriots out of winning the game. Yeah. And if you would just run it 3 straight times, Mahomes may not get the ball back in time. But they scored twice, after that. So yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. Like he sort of is in big game situations has gone against his sort of innate coaching DNA, and it's cost him twice.
Do you feel like McVay, LaFleur, now McDaniel, some of these other coaches that played and learned sort of from him? Do you think they have done a better job of game management in situations like that?
Well, I'll reserve judgment on McDaniel because it's 4 freaking games, and they've already mismanaged to his brain. So, not talking about that. In that scenario, I'm happy to talk about it, but I'm not talking about him managing shit. I think LaFleur has done a really nice job. And the interesting thing, as we're taping this, and I don't know when it's going to pump out there after the Monday night game, that's 7 straight regular season wins for Kyle over Sean McVay. Now, granted, they won the NFC Championship game, courtesy of Jaquiski Tart, but I think McVay is the best at all of those without question, and he has the receipts. Like I talked about, he's won a Super Bowl, he's been to 2, but I think there's a little brother, big brother mentality when these two meet in the regular season, and I think Kyle sees what Sean has done. He's a little pissed. Right? Oh, yeah. He's a little pissed. I talked to Andrew Whitworth about this last night on the 3013 podcast. He says, yeah, we always felt like that Kyle was coaching a little extra against us when the Rams played, because he felt like, you have that situation where, let's just say, do you have any brothers? I don't have brothers. Do you have a brother?
I have 2 brothers.
Okay. Are you the oldest, youngest, or middle?
I'm the youngest of the 3.
Okay. So your big brothers are always going to be your big brothers, right? And they think that way. Say, I don't care what you do. I'm still here. You're the little brother. And you as the little brother, like, I want to get to where you are, and I'm trying to knock you down. I think that mentality exists in this coaching dynamic between Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, and it manifests itself.
There's a real thing there. I was I did a quarterbacks camp in Los Angeles it was pre-COVID, right before COVID probably. And out to dinner, run to Sean McVay and his fiance, and we're sitting down there. I'm with Mike Silver, who now works at San Francisco Chronicle. Yeah. And so anyway, we're all having drinks or whatever, and Sean leans over to me and says, hey, who is the best coach you had in the NFL? Coordinator or best coach? Who is the best coach you had? And I said, Kyle Shanahan was my best coach. He goes, he is the smartest one. He's smarter than all of us. But I'm a better people person. I'm a better coach. So he said to me.
Yeah. But that plays into it, right? That's what we're talking about. It's
a part of, right? Like we're Iowa Staters, and Matt Campbell, our coach, is big into culture. Like it's sort of his, it's really what he sort of stands on. It's the culture of the program. It's not necessarily the X's and O's. It's the Jimmys and the Joes, and getting those guys to play together and play hard and care. And in pro football, it's a different dynamic. It is, the X's and O's are extremely important. To have a coordinator on either side of the football that really understands the details, the techniques, the creativity, the understanding of the other side of the football and how we can take advantage of that. There is real strategy in the National Football League, but it's still a game of people. Yep. It's still a game of how do you manage people, how do you deal with people, not just players, but other coaches, other people in the organization. And listen, I love Kyle and what he's done and what he taught me about football. And I understood him. We're about the same age. So, but for some people, the way he is not as welcoming as say how Sean McVay is. I mean, Sean McVay is like a motivational speaker, and then Matt LaFleur is like this just super nice guy who's just not going to get, if he's upset, like it's like, man, my dad's upset a little bit. I probably did something wrong, but it's not. Kyle can be hard. Yeah. He's sort of, he's got a lot going on in his mind. He's balancing.
It's a lot like his dad. It's a lot like his dad. His dad was tough too.
His dad was tough on his assistants and sometimes players too. I mean, by the way, I do think Mike Shanahan should be in the Hall of Fame.
I think he's getting in. Like some of the, I'm not gonna lie to you. Some of the coaches have got in before him. I'm like, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, two Super Bowls, and really, I mean, about 20 years of tons of.
Well, 2 Super Bowls as a head coach, so many as the offensive coordinator with the Niners. He was the architect. Tell you a great story about Mike Shanahan, and then I'll let you move on. I had Steve Young on the podcast, and before Super Bowl 29, they had lost to the Cowboys. Yeah, and Steve and I went to high school together. You want to talk about you want to talk about feeling inferior?
Who is the better athlete?
Who is the better right-handed thrower?
Probably Steve. Steve dated a woman in our high school, in Greenwich High School, named Christy Fitchner. Now, that name means nothing to you, but in 1986, Christy Fitchner won the Miss USA title.
Wow!
And beat out, among other people, Halle Berry for that championship. So the power couple at my high school, Steve Young, future Hall of Fame quarterback, Christy Fitchner, future Miss USA. The rest of us didn't have a chance, okay? Not a chance. But anyway, back to all of this. Mike Shanahan, Steve Young tells me the story that before Super Bowl 29, they lost the last two NFC Championship games to the Cowboys, and they were playing the Chargers, and there was never a contest. I think on the third play of the game, they hit Jerry Rice for an 80-yard touchdown, and it was in. 49-26 was the final score. Steve Young said, and still has an NFL Super Bowl record, 6 touchdown passes in that game. Mm-hmm. But late in that game, they called off the dogs, and Mike Shanahan was pissed because he told Steve before the game, "You're going to throw 8 touchdown passes in this game. We're gonna." And Steve's like, "Get out of here." No, it's going to happen. Like it's all laid out. They can't do as well. So when they called off the dogs, and Seifert called off the dogs late in that game, Mike Shanahan was furious. He was like, "I put Steve Young back in there. Keep throwing. I said we're getting 8. He might even have said 9. We're getting these 9." Like he was. The game was not in question. It was over. Steve's performance was a virtuoso one. All he wanted to do was back up what he told Steve before the game began. We're getting those freaking touchdown passes.
And what a career he had. But really the legacy. I think that, we're all on this planet for a certain amount of time. You're an athlete. I was an athlete first. And then after that, it's like, what's the legacy you're really going to leave other than maybe some money to my kids? And Mike Shanahan's legacy as a football coach isn't just what he accomplished actually as a coach. It's what he's accomplished in creating, going from him to Kubiak, and then Kubiak into Kyle, and then Kyle into this tree.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this sort of giant sort of Shanahan coaching tree that is just sort of continuing? I mean, because Robert Sala's a part of that. If the Jets turn this thing around, Matt LaFleur's brother, Mike LaFleur, who is the offensive coordinator for the Jets, he'll become a head coach. D'Amico Ryans might become a head coach. At some point in the next 5 years, we might have half the teams in the league sort of coming from the Mike Shanahan, Gary Kubiak, then Kyle Shanahan tree. What are your thoughts about how that's sort of seeping throughout the NFL?
You could make a very compelling argument. It's way better than the Bill Belichick coaching tree, and right up there with the Bill Walsh coaching tree. These are, by the way, the biggest Bill Belichick coaching disciple to me is a guy that didn't even coach under him. It's going to be Vrabel. Vrabel does an amazing job. Mike Shanahan's coaching tree is his legacy, and it's one of the best in the history of the NFL, not just right now, but in the best in the history of the NFL. Go back when they fired Mike Shanahan in Washington, and look at all the coaches they could have hired, and they went with Jay Gruden instead. Like, look at all the coaches that were on that staff that now have head coaching. It's like Alabama quarterbacks. At one time, Mac Jones, Tua, and Jalen Hurts were all quarterbacks on the Alabama football team.
And Kevin O'Connell is part of that.
Yeah, I was about to say Kevin O'Connell is also part of that.
Really, Kevin Stefanski is too, because Kevin, when he got the OC job with the Vikings, they hired Gary Kubiak as a senior consultant or something. It really was just to teach Kevin the offense that Kevin wanted to run, which was his offense. And so, at this point, it's about 8 teams in the NFL, and I think it's going to. And you're right. The Belichick tree has been horrific. Not just losing, but down in a blaze of flames each time. It seems like,
and it looks like Josh is about to do that for a second time with the Raiders. So, not great at all. But the Shanahan coaching tree is, there's not any question in my mind that it's, if not the greatest, one of the greatest in the history of the game.
I had one nerd broadcasting question I wanted to ask you, Trey.
All right.
What was the hardest thing you've had to do and the most enjoyable? Because you've had a wealth and a plethora of, you've pretty much done everything. You've done play-by-play. You obviously hosted NFL Live for years. The NFL Draft, which I imagine is a heavy, heavy lift with all of those names. I always want to know how you guys know right away about all these guys. It's incredible. But then you also had the morning show with Golick, which was fantastic, and SportsCenter and all these things. And now you're in the podcast world. What's been the most enjoyable, plus the golf coverage, which was great too. So what did you enjoy the most as a broadcaster?
The draft is singularly unique. Like I always say, there's no reality in reality television. Like it's all scripted. It's all whatever. Nobody knows what the hell is going to go on in the draft. Like how much money could you have made in Vegas if you say, hey, I want to put down $100,000 that in the 2016 draft, right before the best offensive lineman is drafted, there's going to be a video that shows up of him smoking weed in a gas mask. Like, you cannot prepare for that. There's no way to prepare for that scenario. There's no script. Nobody knows that. So the draft was simultaneously one of the most enjoyable things, but definitely the hardest. Like, I got to say this delicately. I don't like faking it. Like, I don't like pretending. You either do the work to put in thoughtful analysis or you don't. And that's one of the things that I struggled with on the radio show because we're not watching. You can't watch the games. Like, I would stay up and watch all the football games, and I'd stay up on Sundays and Mondays and watch the games. But it's not humanly possible to stay up till 1 o'clock at night every night, or maybe it is for some people, and then get up at 4 a.m. and do the show for 4 hours.
Right, brutal.
I couldn't do it, and I didn't want to do it that way. I didn't want to fake it. So I put in the work on the draft. Like, there was a guy who works with me now at Caesars. His name is Jim Carr. He was the chief Monday Night Football researcher, and he also would prepare these draft notes for me. And I would once the Super Bowl was over, and I ran into hunks like Sage on the beach, I would take 2.5 weeks off. I'd go to Maui, chill out. The moment I got back, mid-February or late February, every day until the draft at the end of April, I would spend all my off time preparing for the draft. And I just want to read, like, for example, he put together these incredible bios and files about all of these amazing things that happened. And this is one of them. And I have this to this day because it shows first of all, the depth of the research that Jim provided for us. Sure. There were other guys as well, Evan Kaplan, Jason Vita, so many great guys over the years at ESPN that really brought the info that made us all look good. But this was in the Joe Burrow file of the 2020 draft. Side note, still the highest watched draft in the history of the NFL. I'll take that as an exit file. Yep. This is one of my favorite nuggets of all time trying to describe Joe Burrow. Burrow played on a travel AAU basketball team when he was 9. During one state tournament game in Columbus, his team was trailing by 8 points with about 30 seconds to go. Quote, "We thought it was over," said Tom Vanderven, who coached the team. But then Burrow took over, scoring 9 consecutive points, including 7 straight foul shots to lead the team to an improbable comeback. The other team kept fouling him, and he kept making shots. Quote, "I'd never seen anything like it," Vanderven said. "It was then that I knew that he was different from everyone else. I couldn't believe the poise under pressure and competitive drive demonstrated by a 9-year-old. The pressure didn't seem to register with him at all. He just stood at the foul line and drained one after another. Most kids that age couldn't hit 2 free throws in a load, especially after the pressure. It gets better." Vanderven, who's a professor of sociology at Ohio University, after that game, he offered Burrow's parents an unsolicited diagnosis of their son. Quote, "Because I'm a sociologist that studies crime, after the game, I told his parents that Joe had the kind of qualities you find in cops and first responders, as well as serial offenders. The point I was making was that he had the kind of qualities these people have, where his pulse doesn't change no matter the situation he finds himself in. He could be mowing the lawn or pulling people from a burning fire, and his pulse would probably stay the same." Huh. And if that doesn't sum up Joe Burrow,
nailed it.
He got sacked 9 times in that playoff game to the Titans. If you get sacked 9 times, you should lose by 40. And he still had the guts and the cojones to come back and set them up with a game-winning field goal. That's the kind of stuff that awesome. I did every night from February through April, because when, Shaquem Harris gets drafted in the 4th round on day 3, you want to be able to tell that story. You want to be able to tell the story of these kids and how they got here. The kid from Kyle Duggar from Lenore College, who was drafted a few years ago, Lenore College was the first guy they drafted since the 40s, or when Ali Marpet became the first Hobart Smith drafted player since Fred, somebody I can't remember his name now, in 1937. That's when you hit the people with that stuff. That's awesome. That's when it's like when Bill Parcells used to say, "This is why you lift all them weights. This is why you do all that stuff to finish this off." I enjoyed that part of it, but it was not easy. Like, it took up a lot of time.
So I imagine when the day you were done,
exhausted.
You got on the airplane, you flew home, you must have been completely exhausted. by there's the preparation, which is like a slow, you're just building up sort of anxiety and all these, and then you actually have like the game, which is it's not one day, it's 3 days.
And it's adrenaline that keeps you through.
It's adrenaline. You're supposed to be excited, and you're giving teams hope that in the 6th round, the guy they got gives them a chance because they need another guard, right? And then it's over. You must be completely exhausted when it's all done.
Yeah, and like the 3rd day, really, you sort of use the draft as a backdrop to talk about football. One of my favorite things about the day 3 of the draft, and quite frankly, day 3 is the most enjoyable. Like day 1, if you can't get through day 1 of the draft, like if you don't know these guys, you are terrible at your job. You have done zero research if you don't know the 32 guys that are probably going to go in the 1st round of the draft. So, but like day 3, we'd get these interviews and, with coaches and all this kind of stuff. Like we had John Schneider on after they took DK Metcalf, and Pete Carroll took his shirt off to welcome in DK. And, we had fun with that. I interviewed Mike Tomlin. That was the year they got rid of both Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. And he had one of the greatest lines. He said, we've had a cleansing here, if you will. Like you get them in sort of a relaxed atmosphere. Where they're going to say way more than they normally would to anybody. And I really enjoyed that. So it was simultaneously the hardest thing, but maybe the most rewarding.
That's awesome.
But all that being said, and I told you I love the golf. My proudest accomplishment of my years at ESPN was founding NFL Live. Okay. Yeah. Like in 2002, they put me on the NBA Tonight, and I told them, I said, "Look, I mean, thanks. This is not for me. Like there are way better NBA people, So this is not. We need to figure something else out." 2003, they launched NFL Live, and I couldn't have been happier. We took that show from a half-hour show on ESPN2 Tuesday through Saturday, which means it never aired on a day when there was a game being played at that point. A half-hour floating time slot on ESPN2 to a Monday through Friday gig, hour-long on ESPN, and became staple programming. And it was the greatest thing ever. Like the people I worked with, whether it was Schlereth or Ryan Clark or Damian Woody or Darren Woodson or Tim Hasselbeck or Jeff Saturday or Ron Jaworski or Merrill Hodge, Ryan Clark, Herm Edwards for 9 years. Yep. All those guys, like there's 3 kinds of people you work with, right? They're your coworkers, your friends, and your boys. Those guys were my boy. Teddy Bruschi, Jesus, how can I forget him? Those guys were my boys. They remain my boys. If I ever need them for anything, I can get them to do anything I want with. And it's the same way. Like there's a bond that we created over 15 years of doing that show together. And to this day, it was the most fun I've had.
Why the NFL? Why is that sort of your...
Well, I can't. That's like saying, why do you like chocolate or vanilla? Like I've always just liked football, and specifically the NFL. I fell in love with football at a very early age. I used to dream about playing. Like when I was a kid, like a really young kid, like 7 or 8, I would dream I would show up in the Dallas Cowboys locker room. And they'd be like, "Who's this kid? What's he doing here?" And then I'd go out and like kick Bob Lilly's ass, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, this guy's got to play." And like that was my dream. When I was a kid, I would write down plays, watching Super Bowls and try and figure out what was going on. I had a little play sheet and all this kind of stuff. I guess it started. We lived overseas for a few years when my dad was covering the Vietnam War. And we moved back in the early 70s. And the first TV game I ever saw was a Monday Night Football game with the Dallas Cowboys and the St. Louis Cardinals at that time. And my parents were both from Texas. My dad's from San Antonio. My mom's from Texarkana. They had family in Dallas and Fort Worth. They said, "Oh, Dallas, that's Dallas Cowboys. That's where we're from." I'm like, "Okay, well then, I just had been overseas. I didn't have a team, so that was going to be my team." Turned out to be a really good team to pick in the 70s. Cowboys won a lot of games, won some Super Bowls. Lost a few to the Steelers. I'm over it. But, and so it just started from there. And if you go up in the East Coast, especially Northeast, there's not a lot of great college football. I mean, there's Penn State. And for a few years, there was Syracuse. But there's not a lot of great big-time college football. So I just became a huge NFL fan.
That's awesome. Well, hey, we certainly appreciate your time. We did want to ask you if you know our guy, Chris Hassel, here on our...
Oh, yeah.
Okay. He kind of has a
fake
resemblance.
Trey Wingo.
Fake Trey Wingo.
Well, let's finish it up. Best 3 sports movies of all time. Yeah, I get back to it.
Okay, so this is great because I have a real a lot of movies that people think are sports movies aren't sports movies. Like for example, Field of Dreams, not a sports movie.
Ooh, it's filmed in Iowa, though.
Yes,
those are strong
I get it.
words.
Look, it's an incredible story about a relationship of a father and son that works through the tapestry of baseball. It's not a baseball movie. It's not a sports movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's not a sports movie.
Got it.
Bull Durham is a sports movie. Bull Durham is the greatest sports movie of all time. I will die on that hill because it's about what it's like to grind in the minors. It is about all
in your top three. Is Hoosiers in your top three?
Has to be.
Yeah,
has to be. Even though I can make it. You look at it now, and some of the things that went on in that movie, it's like, yeah, but it's still great.
Yeah,
it's still great. I'm trying to think what would even qualify. Oh, Slapshot. Slapshot's a real sports movie about the struggles of what it's like to be minor league hockey in Charleston, West Virginia. Like, that's some real shit right there.
It is interesting. The great sports movies are not, a pro golf movie, or a pro football movie. It's high school.
To this point,
minor league.
Yeah.
Right.
About golf, right? Like, everyone loves Tin Cup, right? And I enjoyed Tin Cup. What I hated about Tin Cup, the U.S. Open, it looked like the Deposit Guarantee Classic.
Right. There's nobody there. Yeah.
Well, not only that, but like the golf course, it's like, come on, man, this is not how this is. There was not realism in that movie.
There's not shit everywhere. There's no Pete Dye here. Yeah.
Right.
When I was playing for the Texans, I think it's Kingwood Country Club, which is like North Houston. Yeah. And so we played it one time, and that famous par 5 is like a 410-yard par 4. It's not even a par 5. Yeah. It's not.
Just get it right.
What do we do?
Make it believable to me, and I'm all in. Like, that's a thing for me in sports movies. It's like, I have buddies that are lawyers, and every time they watch like Law and Order, they're like, that never happened that way. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Like, it's got to be authentic, and then it's a sports movie.
And maybe that's the reason a high school sports movie like Hoosiers, or in particular like a minor league movie like Bull Durham, the budgets can be much smaller than trying to make some sort of pro football game or pro.
Well, I'll give you a great example. North Dallas 40, okay, very legendary book and movie of the late 70s. All the football scenes were shot with nobody in the stands, and it was just like, there was no sense of the grandeur of the moment. And I know people are probably dying to say, how do you not have Remember the Titans in one of your top movies? And I'll grant you that. I just never fell in love with it.
That movie didn't hit me right either.
It didn't hit me the right way. I'm not saying if it hits you, that's great. That's wonderful. It's wonderful. I'm happy for you. It never sucked me in the way it sucked in so many other people.
A little too like Disneyed up for me. Yeah. Sort of,
Give me the real shit. I want the real shit. You know what I mean? I want the struggle. I want the breaking in and setting the field just with water so you can have a rain out and have a day off.
You want to go to the preseason and the GOAT of the minor leagues is
exactly right. Sage Rosenfels.
Damn straight.
Well, Trey, hey, certainly appreciate your time. Didn't think we'd get a Leonard Conley reference in the show today, but I am glad we did.
And try to mix it up every once you can. Field of Dreams is not a sports movie.
It's not. It's a great movie. It's not a sports movie. It's a great movie.
It's
not a sports movie.
If you ever need a private stop in Iowa, you know who to call.
Done. Well, you laugh. You laugh now. You laugh. But,
we got some places
that might be
for
happening.
Thank you, Trey. That guy loves NFL football. I mean, he got me fired up just to dig in deeper. Like he out. Sage, I say this as a compliment to myself, so I'm patting myself on the back. It's hard to out-nerd me when it comes to some of this stuff. Trey Wingo did. He just did. He's pulling stuff out from, the 04 regular season, and, man, big time. That was great. Great get, Sage Rosenfels.
It was a nice get. By the way, next week, as of right now, Ricky Williams is scheduled to come on the podcast.
The Ricky Williams.
The Ricky Williams was Iowa State, Texas.
That's right.
That is my next trip down to Austin for that game, which happens to be on the second weekend of Austin City Limits Festival, which
oh boy,
it's going to be nice. Chili peppers on Sunday night. So hopefully a Cyclones win on Saturday, some chili peppers on Sunday night. Nice little trip to Austin. Hopefully a lot of my college teammates, a lot of times we make every other year the Iowa State Texas game is sort of a little reunion. It's an easy place to go to Austin, Texas. It's a little bit better than like a Stillwater or a Manhattan or a Lubbock. And so that's my next trip. But Trey Wingo, man, the energy. Somebody is obviously has made millions of dollars over the course of his long career.
Clearly, with his private flights from Maui to Connecticut.
Lives a great life.
I'm jealous. Yeah.
But when someone's paid to talk, like when you can, like, this guy's paid to talk, he's good at it.
Yeah.
And when he comes on, there's an immediate presence, there's immediate energy that does just get you fired up. So you see why on, NFL Live for all those years, he got people excited about football because he is excited about football. He loves it. He loves the players, he loves the coaches, and obviously he loves the stats. Unbelievable where he pulled some of those things out of the hat, and scores and games and plays and what Kyle Shanahan should have done at that Super Bowl. I mean, I sort of forget things over time. There's a lot of games that occur, and his memory seems to be incredibly sharp.
I'm glad we had the chance to do that. That was outstanding, and we're just a couple slappies, in the Midwest. But he took an hour out of his day, and man, it was like it was NFL Live. Like he was geared up and ready to go. So awesome stuff, and really enjoyed that, Sage. So enjoy. Your quiet week at the home front. You're not traveling when you go to Austin.
Pretty quiet week, just sort of hanging out, and mow the yard while there's a few more months, maybe a month left to mow it before the death of winter comes knocking at the door. Just living the good life. Taking my daughter to dance practice, picking her up from dance practice, taking her to dance practice, picking her up from dance practice, and trying to find some dinner in between sometimes. So. I'm home, which is nice. I'm around my dog. If you can see my dog in the background,
I did have to ask you one thing, because I've been wanting to ask you this since I've gotten to know you 10 years ago. Iowa State plays Kansas State this week. One of the most painful memories of my youth was the game you guys played against them in 1999.
Yes.
Do you recall this game?
I do.
I believe it was a ranked K-State team with Bill Snyder, and you guys are leading 28-7 at halftime. Is that right? 28-7, and then shit got out of control, Sage. And I'm still not quite over it, and it's 23 years later.
I'd sort of try to put that one out.
I'm sorry.
You don't remember, you don't forget games that you were a part of. In particular, the ones where you had a big lead and you lost it, or you were way behind and you came back. Those ones are scars, good and bad, sometimes in your brain till the day I die. But yes, 28-7. We are running outside zone to
killed it.
Just kill them with our running backs, and reversing to J.J. Moses, and then a little bootleg off that, little tight end dump to Mike Banks for 20 in the flat. And it was just, we were rolling. I think that was probably the most productive half of football that I offensively. I've been in games where we scored more than 28 points. That was just sheer domination of a very good
team,
Kansas State team, who had a whole bunch of NFL players on us, in particular on the defense. Ben Lieber, longtime Charger and Viking. Their corners back in the day.
Terrence Newman, right?
Yeah, exactly. The corners back in the day were some of the best in all of college football, and so it's a very, very good defense, and we were rolling them. Second half, they come out, boom, right down and score on us, and now it's 28-14. Again, that's what Trey talked about, pressure. Bill Belichick, right, putting pressure on the other teams. They score right away. We move the ball, and then we don't score, and then they score right away.
They had a punt return for a touchdown at one point.
They had a 90. I feel like I can't remember the little receiver's name.
Yeah. Yes.
But I played with him in the Senior Bowl. And believe me, he let me hear about it at the Senior Bowl. I think he caught the ball on the 4 and went 96. And it was the classic outkick your coverage. Carl Gomez, our punter, booms one about 55 yards, backs him all the way up. But the problem is when unless you have insane hang time, your guys aren't going to get down there. And so there's just a lot of field that they have to cover. There's a lot of space between the first tacklers and the return guy. So when you give a guy about 10 yards to make moves on these guys sprinting down, once you get through that line, there wasn't anyone else there. And so that was a huge play in that football game. And then my senior year, I played terrible.
That was a bad deal.
But those ones are easy to forget. But the 20th, yes, I remember that one.
Aaron Lockett was the punt returner. So he's, I think, related to Tyler for the. Was that
Was
the guy?
it?
Was that
I don't
him?
know. It wasn't Aaron Lockett.
Wasn't Aaron Lockett? I'm
No,
looking
but
at the roster anyway. That
Aaron
was.
Lockett, who was Kevin Lockett's.
Oh no, I gotcha. David Allen.
David Allen.
David Allen.
That's right.
Yeah. Man,
Aaron
that's
Lockett, by the way, was I played my rookie year in Washington. Kevin Lockett was our third wide receiver. He was our slot wide receiver, and he had played at Kansas State. His brother was Aaron Lockett, and then his son is the Lockett up in Seattle, which is pretty incredible. And he married a girl, by the way, from, I believe, Cedar Falls, Iowa.
No way.
Introduced to at a function or something, or he went back to Iowa for some reason by Mitch Running, who was a walk-on receiver at Kansas State way back in the day. Now we're talking about like mid-90s here. For those who are very old. So Mitch was from Cedar Rapids, Cedar Falls, walks on to Kansas State because Snyder was still getting some Iowa guys. He knew the state of Iowa pretty well and could get some guys to leave Iowa or Iowa State and go down to Kansas State and build that thing. And the Lockett family is like Kansas State legacy down there in Manhattan.
So that K-State team ended up going 11-1 and finished 5th in the country. And you guys are up 28-7 at half. Sage.
We didn't know how to win.
You
at
guys
that point.
You did not.
We were hoping to win. We wanted to win. We wanted to win more than anything because my freshman year, 96, we won 2 games. 97, 1 game. 98, 3 games. 99, we knew we were a better football team. We won 4 games. We were 4-7. Played 11 games back then, but we knew we were close. And this is one of those games, but there was about 4 of these games that just came down. Colorado, we lost right at the end. Texas, we lost 44-41 on the last second field goal. We just didn't know how, or didn't probably have that like true belief that like Campbell has got with these guys, with the culture for our Cyclones. And so that's where we didn't learn that until the next year. I think in that whole offseason was like, guys, we can do this. We can play with these guys. We can beat these guys, and we're going to want it more. And we put the work in, and guys got better. We added some young players, of course, and our seniors played great. Reggie Hayward, just got inducted in the Iowa State Hall of Fame.
Congrats, Reggie.
Long NFL career. James Reed, nose tackle, long NFL career. We had a lot of very talented players in that team, and we put it together our senior year, and 4-7 turned into 9-3.
Hey.
We won all those football games.
Sometimes it takes the pain to get to the pinnacle. So
usually it does.
Yeah.
Usually in life, when things are hard, you grow from it. Somebody once said to me, there is no growth without conflict. Actually, it was Jamie Cole, whose son JJ is going to Iowa State. He was my kicker. Cole's kicking camps. He's sort of one of the main kicking camp people in the United States in high school football and youth football. But we were talking about conflict and how conflict is necessary for growth. We're not talking about getting in fights, but things that are hard for you physically, mentally, emotionally. But if you respond the right way, there's so much growth to be had if you put yourself in places of conflict and situations that are hard, not easy. And we went through a lot of hard times in Dan McCarney those first 4 years, and it definitely made my senior year. We didn't win a national championship, but to us, what we accomplished probably meant as much as an Alabama, player winning an SEC championship and going to the national championship game. It meant everything to us, and those bonds are still very close to this day.
Well said. Well said. Well, Sage, great show, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, great show.
Cheers.